Okay, good morning to all. Then there are 32 participants. Then subject title is HRM, Buddhist approach, Human Resource Management Buddhist approach. This is a elective subject. However, this become a core subject because there is no another elective subject offered by the department. Therefore, all have to follow this course. Then, before I'm going to start this my session, I want to ask who is the leader of this group? Who is the leader? Leader mean the representative of the alumni. Sorry, representative of the HRM family. There are two students, one from girls, one from boys. How the HRM family के representative විදියට ඉන්නේ. එහෙම නැත්නම් ඉස්සරහට සභාපති විදියට ඉන්නේ. මත් දැනට අද ජොයින්ට් වෙලා නැද්ද මේ වෙනකොට? ටිරාන් නානායක්කාර. ඔයාගේ මයික් එක ඕන් කරන්නකෝ. ටිරාන් නානායක්කාර.
Yes, sir.
කොයාගේ මුණ පේන්නේ නැහැ.
Just give me 1 second, sir.
Okay. අප්පා. ඔයාද representative. ඔයාද representative.
No, sir.
What is the
Anuradha
name?
Daya Bandara.
දයා බණ්ඩාර.
Sir, Anuradha Daya Bandara කියලා කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා.
අනුරාධ දයා බණ්ඩාර අද ජොයින්ට් වෙලාද? දන්නේ නැහැ නේ.
Yes, sir.
කො අනුරාධ දයා බණ්ඩාර? අනුරාධ මම දන්නේ ඇරිත් තියෙන්නේ අනුරාධ.
Yes, sir.
අනුරාධ
join වෙලා නැහැ තාම.
ජොයින්ට් වෙලා නැද්ද?
නෑ sir, තාම නෑ join
එයා අද
වෙලා.
උදේකට එන්න වෙන එකක් නෑ කිව්වා මේ අදිසි වැඩකට මේ නුවර යනවා කියලා.
හා. හරි. මට පොඩ්ඩක් කියන්නකෝ how many students are Tamil student and how many Muslim student in your group?
One Muslim student and 3 Tamil students.
3 Tamil student, 1 Muslim student. 3 Tamil, 1 Muslim. Do you have any idea about how many
Yes, sir.
Catholic student, Christian student? No idea.
දන්න තරමින් නම් එක්කෙනයි sir මම ඉන්නේ. හරියටම දන්නේ නෑ.
එතකොට 5 දෙනෙක් කියනවා. 1යි Catholic, Christian, 1යි 2යි 5 දෙනෙක්. Okay. Doesn't matter. Okay, Tiran. Another number na Um, okay, together now 46 students are participating to this session. This topic is human resource management Buddhist approach. Then the title of the subject imply this is a religious based subject. Buddhism is a religion. Then here I want to say that there are one Muslim student and three Tamil student, or sometimes there are another two, three Catholic or Christian student. Don't worry about the subject. I am not going to teach about Buddhism. මම බුද්ධාගම උගන්වන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. මම බුද්ධාගම දන්නෙත් නැහැ. මම බුද්ධාගම උගන්වන්න යන්නෙත් නැහැ. This subject highly based on the human resource management theories or practice derived from the Buddhism. Buddhist literature, it is a very vast one. From the Buddhist literature, I try to take several theories, concept, ideas, stories that those are help to human resource management. The ultimate objective of this subject is to develop our own human resource management with our own concept. Whoever the people coming from Muslim religion or the Hindu or the Christian or the Catholic, all are Sri Lankan, then all are apply in our culture, all are apply in our day-to-day practice. Therefore, we, whatever the religion, whatever the nationality, we are practicing, we are living with single culture. Single culture. Then within the culture, there may be different varieties. Don't worry about that. Then we need to develop our own management practices. Then I hope through this session you can get several ideas regarding how Buddhism or the Buddhist concept, theories, ideas apply in the field of human resource management. මේක බුද්ධාගම පාඩමක් නෙවෙයි. බුද්ධාගමේ තියෙන භාවනා කරන්නේ කොහොමද, එහෙම නැත්නම් සත්තු මරන්න එපා කියන්නේ කොහොමද, ඒව ගැන කතා කරන්නේ. බුද්ධාගම තුල තියෙන සංකල්ප, අදහස්, න්‍යායන්, කතාන්දර වගේ දේවල් අරගෙන ඒක කොහොමද මානව සම්පත් කළමනාකරණයට බලපාන්නේ කියන කතා කිරීම තමයි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ. ඒතකොට මේකෙදී ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන එකම දේ තමයි ඉදිරි අනාගත කාලෙදී අපිටම කියලා අපේම කළමනාකරන පද්ධතියක් හදනවා නම් හරියට ජපානයේට වගේ ඒකට යම්කිසි උපකාරයක් උදව්වක් මේ ශාස්ත්‍රය තුලින් කරන්න. ඒ හින්දා මුස්ලිම් ළමයි, දෙමළ ළමයි, ක්‍රිස්තියානි ළමයි මේ විෂය හැදෑරීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් ගැටලුවක් ඇති කරගන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. මේකෙදි බුද්ධ ආගම උගන්වන්නේ යන්නේ නැහැ. Then I want to clearly say that this subject is not the Buddhism. This is a HRM subject. Okay, then first part, however, in the first part, I am going to give very brief introduction about the Buddhism, because without this idea, you can't follow the course. I believe majority of the Buddhist people, Buddhist students, then they have good idea about the basic Buddhism. Then I want to again say, then I prepare two videos. Then first I play the video. Then one by one, I will explain.
Following are the learning objectives of this session. To explore
Tiran, if there is any issues regarding my session, can you tell me? Tiran,
Yes, sir.
Tirad,
Hello. Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
if there is any issues regarding my session, can you tell me? මට කියන්න පුළුවන්ද?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. No
මගේ
problem.
නම්බර එක ඔයා ෆෝන් එකෙන්ද කම්පියුටර් එකෙන්ද ගිහින් තියෙන්නේ?
මම කම්පියුටර් එකකින් ඉන්නේ sir.
හරි ෆෝන් එක ළඟ තියෙනවනේ.
ඔව් sir.
ඔයා ෆෝන් එක කොහේ හරි ලියා ගන්න 0.71යි
532යි 89 53 නේද sir?
53යි 289යි 53.
ඔව් sir මං ගාව තියෙනවා.
මට ඒකට SMS එකක් දාන්නද එහෙම වුණොත් මොකක් හරි. මම වීඩියෝ දෙකක් ප්ලේ කරනවා වීඩියෝ දෙක පේන්නේ නැත්නම් මට කියන්න. හරිනේ?
හරි sir. හරි. හරි.
Following are the learning objectives of this session. To explore the basic understanding about the Buddhism. To explain the nature of the subject. What are the major denominations of Buddhism? According to the literature and the practice, there are two major denominations of Buddhism. Theravada. Mahayana. Theravada. Theravada Buddhism is mainly practiced in Southeastern Asia, such as Sri Lanka, Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. Mahayana. Mahayana Buddhism is mainly practiced in Northern Asia, such as China, Korea, Tibet, and Japan. Theravada Buddhism. The emphasis of Theravada Buddhism is practice for the spiritual attainment and liberation of the individual. Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhism, which includes Zen, emphasizes the need to practice for self-actualization and then ultimately, to liberate all beings from suffering. 3 Denomination. Theravada. The Theravada tradition of Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia, also sometimes referred to as Southern Buddhism. Its canonical scriptures are preserved in Pali, an ancient Indian language closely related to Sanskrit. The school exemplifies a certain conservatism. Relative to the other two traditions, it can be regarded as generally closer in doctrine and practice to ancient Buddhism as it existed in the early centuries BCE in India. Mahayana. Its scriptures are preserved in Chinese and its general outlook is that of the Mahayana or Great Vehicle. East Asian Buddhism is extremely diverse. It has coexisted with Confucianism, Taoism, Shinto, and, more recently but less happily, communism. Tibetan. The Tibetan tradition, also sometimes referred to as Northern Buddhism. Its scriptures are preserved in Tibetan and once more its outlook is broadly that of the Mahayana, but its more specific orientation is that of the vehicle of the Diamond Thunderbolt, Vajrayana, also known as Tantric Buddhism. Who founded? Where? When? And how? Buddhism was founded by Siddhartha Gautama approximately 2,500 years ago in the Himalayas between present-day India and Nepal. Siddhartha Gautama was born around the year 563 BC, the son of King Suddhodana and Queen Maya of the Shakya clan. After 29 years of luxurious and sheltered existence, he first saw a sick man, an old man, and a dead man. Finally saw a preacher. Realizing that he was unsatisfied with his lavish and comfortable life, Siddhartha Gautama left his father's palace to seek to understand the causes of suffering. He then practiced severe asceticism for many years, denying his body food and drink until he reached the point of starvation. At the age of 35, after realizing that death would bring him no closer to enlightenment, he again took food and entered deep meditation beneath a tree. After 7 days and nights of meditation, he attained enlightenment and became known as the Buddha, meaning one who is truly awake. He taught monks, disciples, and laypeople throughout India for 45 years until his peaceful death at the age of 80. Why? Buddhism was founded as a way to end suffering. The Buddha began his search in response to suffering. He wanted to find a way to live a life of happiness, wisdom, compassion, joy and equanimity. Deities and divinity. The Buddha is not a god or deity, nor is he worshipped by Buddhists as a god or embodiment of God. The Buddha himself emphasized that he was not a god, but was simply a human being who was fully awake, attentive and aware of the here and now. He did not ask to be worshipped but rather encouraged others to look deeply into themselves to answer fundamental questions about life and death. A common confusion stems from the fact that Buddhists often have statues of the Buddha in their homes and places of worship. This is done to serve as a reminder of our own true nature of wisdom and compassion. Therefore, bowing before such figures is neither idolatry nor worship of the figure itself, but rather a sign of gratitude, respect and recognition. This practice has its roots in Asian culture, where bowing was not construed in the same way as it was and is in the Western world. Within Buddhism there is no conception of God as one who judges, sets an immutable fate, creates, or destroys. However, in the sense that some understand God as a divine light expressed within all people, a very similar idea exists within Buddhism. Buddhism by no means rejects the idea of divinity or the divine. Buddhists believe that every moment and every person is an embodiment of this divinity. Who, and indeed what, was the Lord Buddha? The word Buddha is not a name but a title, its meaning is woken up. A Buddha awakens to the knowledge of the world as it truly is and in so doing finds release from suffering. He teaches out of sympathy and compassion for the suffering of beings, for the benefit and welfare of all beings. He teaches in order to lead others to awaken to the understanding that brings final relief from suffering. Buddhist scriptures. Buddhism cannot be reduced to a collection of theoretical writings nor a philosophical system of thought, although both these form an important part of its tradition. What lies at the heart of Buddhism, according to its own understanding of the matter, is Dharma. Dharma is not an exclusively Buddhist concept, but one which is common to Indian philosophical, religious, social, and political thought in its entirety. According to Indian thought, Dharma is that which is the basis of things, the underlying nature of things, the way things are. In short, it is the truth about things, the truth about the world. More than this, Dharma is the way we should act. The Buddha regarded the Dharma he had found as profound, hard to see, hard to understand, peaceful, sublime, beyond the sphere of mere reasoning, subtle, to be experienced by the wise. Knowledge of Dharma is not a matter of scholarly and intellectual study. This does mean that such study may not have a part to play, yet it can never be the whole story. In fact, according to an ancient and authoritative view of the matter, knowledge of Dharma comes about as a result of the interplay between three kinds of understanding. Dharma arises from listening, sutra, that which arises from reflection, cinta, and that which arises from spiritual practice, bhavana. The aim of Buddhism is to put into practice a particular way of living the holy life, or spiritual life, brahmacharya. That involves training in ethical conduct, sila, and meditative and contemplative techniques, samadhi, and which culminates in the direct realization of the very knowledge, prajna, the Buddha himself reached under the tree of awakening. In general, Buddhist literature is voluminous and not all has been translated. The scriptures are written both in Pali, a classical, sacred dialect of Sanskrit, and in Sanskrit. Pali was used by the monks of the Theravada tradition and Sanskrit by the monks of the Mahayana tradition. The Theravada texts. Pitakaya. 3 baskets. Sutra Pitakaya. Basket of discourses. Vinaya Pitakaya. Basket of discipline. Abhidhamma Pitakaya. Basket of higher teachings.
තිලෙන කියලා තියෙනවා මේ වීඩියෝ එක පැහැදිලි නැහැ කියලා. වීඩියෝ එක පෙනුනද අකුරු එහෙම පෙනුනද කියන එක තමයි ප්‍රශ්නේ. සමහරක් වෙලාවට අපහැදිලි වෙන්නේ නැති මගේ ඉන්ටර්නෙට් කනෙක්ෂන් එකෙත් ඔයාලගේ ඉන්ටර්නෙට් කනෙක්ෂන් එකෙත් තියෙන ප්‍රශ්න නිසා. Okay, then I again replay and discuss.
Following are the learning.
Yes, Tila. Okay, then Tilan asks me, there are several students are waiting to join. However, there are 47 participants, 46 participants. If you are going to try, if you are trying to join with us, then here I can, there is alert actually. Then all are, I click join. Okay, then the first session of the today is about introduction. Then I hope to give basic understanding about the Buddhism because this is important. Therefore, one learning outcome is exploring the basic understanding about the Buddhism. Then secondly, to explain the nature of the subject. Then I already explained nature of the subject, but at the end of this session, I again try to explain the nature of the subject.
Objectives of this session: to explore the basic understanding about the Buddhism, to explain the nature of the subject. What are the major denominations of Buddhism?
When we are concerning Buddhism, there are main denominations of Buddhism. Denomination mean Nikaya or category. Then in the Christian, like a Christian Catholic, there are denominations, categories, Nikaya. Then according to the whole holistic view, there are two types of denominations of Buddhism. One is Theravada Buddhism, other one is Mahayana Buddhism.
According to the literature and the practice, there are two major denominations of Buddhism: Theravada, Mahayana. Theravada. Theravada Buddhism is mainly
Theravada Buddhism basically followed or the practiced by the Southeastern Asian countries like Sri Lanka, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia. Then the Mahayana Buddhism is mainly practiced in Northern Asia, like China, Korea, Tibet, and Japan.
The emphasis of Theravada Buddhism is practice for the spiritual attainment and liberation of the individual.
Then when we are concerning Theravada Buddhism practice spiritual attainment and liberalization of individual. Spiritual attainment mean the final target of Buddhist people. ආධ්‍යාත්මික ළඟාවීම කියන එක spiritual attainment. Then liberation of individual. Hello. Oh. මම lecture එකේ ඉන්නේ. Lecture එකේ ඉන්නේ. Okay. Then Theravada Buddhism practice spiritual attainment and liberalization of individual. Then spiritual attainment mean ආධ්‍යාත්මික ළඟාවීම, liberalization of individual mean පුද්ගල විමුක්තිය. Then through the Theravada Buddhism, Buddhist people can attain Nibbana with the freedom of life or removing the suffering.
Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhism, which includes Zen, emphasizes the need to practice for self-actualization and then ultimately to liberate all beings from suffering.
In Mahayana Buddhism emphasize self-actualization. I think you have idea about self-actualization. This concept was discussed by Abraham Maslow in his from his motivational model. There are then Abraham Maslow introduced need hierarchy theory. When the in the need hierarchy theory, the top need is self-actualization. Then Mahayana Buddhism explain or practice self-actualization and then ultimately to liberate all being from suffering. Then same thing, but in different practice. With when we are compare with the Theravada.
Three denomination.
Then again, then at the beginning I explained there are two type of denominations, Mahayana and Theravada. We are practicing Theravada. However, when we are again reviewing the word practice, there are three denominations. තුන් ආකාරයේ නිකායවල් තුනක් අපිට දකින්න පුළුවන්. ලෝකේ පුරාම තියෙන බුද්ධ ආගම දිහා බැලුවම when we are reviewing the world Buddhism, there are three denominations. First one is Theravada, then second one is Mahayana. In addition to Theravada and Mahayana, there is another one, Tibetan Buddhism. Okay, then Theravada Buddhism, Theravada tradition of Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia also sometimes refers as Southern Buddhism.
Theravada. The Theravada tradition of Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia, also sometimes referred to as Southern Buddhism. Its canonical scriptures are preserved in Pali, an ancient Indian language closely related to Sanskrit.
Then Theravada Buddhism use canonical scriptures. Canonical scriptures කියලා කියන්නේ ලේඛනයන්. මේ ලේඛනයන් කියලා අපි ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ ත්‍රිපිටක ධර්මය. ත්‍රිපිටක ධර්මය. Then canonical scriptures are presented in Pali and Sanskrit. Then there are two languages, Pali language and Sanskrit language. Then both language we can read Tripitaka.
The school exemplifies a certain conservatism. Relative to the other two traditions, it can be regarded as generally closer in doctrine and practice to ancient Buddhism as it existed in the early centuries BCE in India.
Theravada Buddhism is orientation of conservationism. Gatanugatikatya. It means the real Buddhism. Theravada Buddhism explain the real Buddhism. Then sometimes we are saying pre-Buddha's period. Theravada Buddhism or Theravada country, the countries adopt Theravada Buddhism practice the original ideas, thought, definitions given by the Lord Buddha. Then therefore, it is then very pure ideas. Theravada explain the pure ideas. Pure ideas mean the real Buddha's word. However, here say relating to the other two tradition, it can be regarded as generally closer to the doctrine and practice to ancient Buddhism as it existed in the early centuries BCE in India. Then it means then Theravada Buddhism is the real Buddhism rather than the Mahayana and Tibetan Buddhism.
Mahayana. Its scriptures are preserved in Chinese and its general outlook is that of the Mahayana or Great Vehicle.
Mahayana, under the Mahayana Buddhism, scriptures are maintained in Chinese language. The outlook is greater vehicle. They use greater vehicle.
Asian Buddhism is extremely diverse. It has coexisted with Confucianism, Taoism, Shinto, and more recently but less happily, communism.
When compared with the Theravada Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism has different ideas. Then Mahayana Buddhism is a collection of different ideas. Within the China, there are different religions. For example, Confucianism. Taoism, Shinto. Then recently added idea communism. Then Mahayana Buddhism. Then people when adapting Mahayana Buddhism, they link with the Confucianism, Taoism, Shinto, communism. Then they link different other sub religions. Okay. Then when we are concerning the number of religion in the world, can you tell me how many religion in the world? අපි ලෝකයේ තියෙන ආගම් ගත්තොත් ආගම් කොච්චරක් තියෙනවද ලෝකේ? ඈ ආගම් කොච්චරක් තියෙනවද? අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ ආගම් විදියට ක්‍රිස්තියානි ආගම, මුස්ලිම් ආගම, බුද්ධ ආගම, Hindu ආගම. Then usually we are referring Catholic or Christian, Muslim, Buddhism and Hindu as a religion. But when we are reviewing the world practice, there are more than 4,000 religions. ආගම් තියෙනවා 4,000කට වැඩිය. සාමාන්‍ය ආගමන්ට් එක තමයි ඉන්න ලෝකේ ඉන්න මිනිස්සු වගේ දෙගුණයක්කට ප්‍රමාණයක් ආගම් තියෙනවා කියන එක. Then the normal conclusion, how many number of religion in the world, the number of religion can determine the double of the population in the world. Why? For the example, as a Buddhist person, I am basically following Buddhism. And in addition to Buddhism, I am going to Kovilata's channel. Devalata's channel. Then I am again following Hindu. Buddhism plus Hindu. Then Catholic people, they follow the Catholic or Christian religion. Again, sometimes they are going to Kovil. Then likewise, when we are concerning individual, one individual have more than two or at least two religious ideas. Or they are accepting at least two religious ideas, doctrine. Therefore, there are big number of religion in the world. Okay.
Tibetan. The Tibetan tradition, also sometimes referred to as Northern Buddhism. Its scriptures are preserved in Tibetan, and once more its outlook is broadly that of the Mahayana, but its more specific orientation is that of the vehicle of the Diamond Thunderbolt, Vajrayana, also known as Tantric Buddhism.
Then Tibetan Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism is, and the third category, I think, sorry sir, there is one girl in waiting room. She asking me to message her to add she is in the session. අනේ ඉතින් මේක පෙන්නන්නේ නෑනේ මට එන්නේ නෑනේ. එයාට ලින්ක් වෙන්න කියන්නකෝ ලින්ක් වුණොත් මට මේකේ ඕකේ කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඕකේ කරන්න මට යාව ලින්ක් වෙලා නෑ. 46 දෙනෙක් participant ඉන්නවා. There are 46 participants, but there is no මම ඒක හොයාගන්නේ. කවුද අප්පා ඒ? නෑනේ එහෙම කෙනෙක්. 46ක් ඇඩ් කරගෙන ඉන්නවා. I said she to log again to the session. Yeah, that is the best. Okay, then Tibetan Buddhism. Tibetan, I think you have idea about Tibet. Then Tibet when we are telling, when we are talking about Tibetan Buddhism, the main character is Dalai Lama. Then Dalai Lama is the head or the chief of the Tibetan Buddhism. Then Tibetan Buddhism scriptures maintained in Tibetan like Mahayana, but special orientation of Vajrayana. Vajrayana. Uh, then second
Who
part.
founded? Where? When? And how?
Then this section, I hope to explain the founder, about the founder, several information regarding the founder, who founded, where, when, and how. Then Buddhism was founded by Siddhartha Gautama. Sometime you, I think your my video pronunciations may be different meaning. Siddhartha Gautama approximately 2,500 years ago in Himalaya between present day India and Nepal.
Buddhism was founded by Siddhartha Gautama approximately 2,500 years ago in the Himalayas between present-day India and Nepal. Siddhartha Gautama was born around the year 563 BC, the son of King Suddhodana and Queen Maya of the Shakya clan.
Then Siddhartha Gautama was born around the year 563 BC. BC mean before the, then it mean actually, then we are starting, now we are living 2020. 2020 calculate from the Christian or Catholic perspective. Then before 563 was the date of birth of Siddhartha. Then when Siddhartha's life, the father is Suddhodana and the mother is Queen Maya, Mahamaya. Then the caste is Sakya, Sakya. Sakya Kulaye, Siddhartha Upadine, Suddhodana Saha, Mahamaya, Amma Tata Vidya.
After 29 years of luxurious and sheltered existence, he first saw a sick man, an old man, and a dead man.
Then Siddhartha was a princess, Rajakumari. He spent his life 29 years. 29 years. The 29 years mean the luxurious life. As a prince or the palace, within the palace, Siddhartha Gautama enjoyed the life as the luxurious way. However, at the age of 29, he showed several incidents. First, he was saw sick man. It is common. The second one, old man. Then third one, dead man. Sick man, old man, dead man. Then finally, saw a monk, preacher. Then I think a Buddhist student know there are three palaces, Ramni Subha, because the father of Siddhartha Gautama built separate three luxurious palaces to control Siddhartha's feelings control කරන්න තමයි එහෙම පැලස් තුනක් හදලා තිබ්බේ. However, suddenly during several days he saw sick man, old man, dead man, and monk. 4 items, 4 incidents. Then after showing these 4, he realized the reality of the luxurious life.
Finally saw a preacher. Realizing that he was unsatisfied with his lavish and comfortable life, Siddhartha Gautama left his father's palace to seek to understand the causes of suffering.
Then sick man, old man, dead, and monk indicate the suffering of the life. Suffering of the life. Therefore, then Siddhartha Gautama realized this what? Suffering. Suffering. Therefore, Siddhartha Gautama decided to left his father's place to find the reality of the world.
He then practiced severe asceticism for many years, denying his body food and drink until he reached the point of starvation.
At that period in the India, there are several people try to find the reality of the words. For example, Nikanda. The Nikanda is another religion. So far, it is practicing by people. Then at that day, uh, at that day, there are many people try to find the reality of the world. Therefore, there are several asceticisms. Asceticism කියලා කියන්නේ තාපසයන්. Uddakaraama Puttaka, Alama Kalama. Likewise, there are different asceticism. Then Siddhartha Gautama tried practice from those teachers to identify the reality of the world, reality of the human. Then finally, select a path of denying food and drink. I think Buddhist students know Siddhartha Gautama went to jungle, refusing food and drinks. Denying is food and drinks. අපි කියන මේකට අත්ත කිලමතානු යෝගී කියලා. Then Siddhartha Gautama practiced to refuse everything.
At the age of 35, after realizing that death would bring him no closer to enlightenment, he again took food and entered deep meditation beneath a tree.
Then after 6 years, starting from denying food and drink, here Siddhartha Gautama realized this is not the way to getting entitled enlightenment or the being a nibbana. Therefore, he started to again take the food and water and start another life. The life is meditation.
After 7 days and nights of meditation, he attained enlightenment and became known as the Buddha, meaning one who is truly awake.
Then after 7 days, attain enlightenment and become known as the Buddha. The Buddha means one who is truly awake. One who is truly awake. නිවැරදිව සම්පූර්ණ වශයෙන් අවදි වුණු පුද්ගලෙක්. Truly awake. One who is truly awake. Truly awake.
He taught monks, disciples, and laypeople throughout India for 45 years until his peaceful death at the age of 80.
Then monk, disciples, and lay people accepted his teaching. Monks mean the Hamudro, disciple Goleo, the disciple may be monks also, and lay people mean the not the monks. Lay people are the people who are living with the day-to-day other needs like you and me. The Lord Buddha spent 45 years dead at age of 80. Then how many years? 35 years spent his service to the world.
Why? Buddhism was founded as a way to end suffering. The Buddha began his search in response to suffering. He wanted to find a way to live a life of happiness, wisdom, compassion, joy, and equanimity.
Then why? Why Buddhism? Then Buddhism was found as a way of end suffering. End suffering. Vindima, dukkha neti kirima කියන එක. End suffering. Buddha searched suffering, then searching suffering. How to start suffering, how to spend the suffering, how affect the suffering, how to affect the suffering, likewise, searching suffering and response to suffering. Then try to find how to remove the suffering, how to avoid the suffering, how to eradicate the suffering. Then through these two things, searching suffering and response to suffering, then he finally tried to bring a life with happy, wisdom, compassion, and joy.
Deities and divinity. The Buddha is not a god or deity, nor is he worshipped by Buddhists as a god or embodiment of God.
Then important thing in the Buddhism, then Buddhism is not a God-oriented religion. දෙවියන් පදනම් කරගනිපු ආගමක් නෙවෙයි. In the world, we can divide it basically God-oriented religion and non-God-oriented religions. Then Buddhism is non-God-oriented religion. දෙවියන් පදනම් කරගනිපු දේවත්ව සංකල්පය නැති ආගමක් තමයි බුද්ධ ආගම කියලා කියන්නේ. දැන් ක්‍රිස්තියානි ආගම ගත්තොත් දේවත්වයේ තියෙන දේවත්වයේ කියන සංකල්පයේ තියෙන religion එකක් කියලා කියනවා. When we are concerning Catholic or Christian, they are following the God. But Buddhism is not a God or deity. දෙවියෝ හෝ දේවිතාවන් ගැන කතා කරන පදනම් වෙච්ච subject මේ religion එකක් නෙවෙයි. Not is a worship by Buddhist as a God. God දෙවියෙක් විදියට අපි බුදුහාමුදුරුවන්ට වඳින්නේ නැහැ.
The Buddha himself emphasized that he was not a god, but was simply a human being who was fully awake, attentive and aware of the here and now.
Then Buddha is a human, not the God. But among the human, Buddha become a unique one because he was fully awake. He was fully awake. He was fully awake. Then Buddha is a normal human, normal man, but the thing is, he was fully awake. Fully awake කියලා කියන්නේ සම්පූර්ණ වශයෙන් අවදි වුණු කෙනෙක්. අවදි වුණු කෙනෙක්.
He did not ask to be worshipped but rather encouraged others to look deeply into themselves to answer fundamental questions about life and death.
Then he did not ask to be worshipped. That is important. And asked to answer the fundamental question about life and death. Then Lord Buddha did not ask to worship, and he asked what? Themselves to answer fundamental questions about life and death. What is the life? What is the death?
A common confusion stems from the fact that Buddhists often have statues of the Buddha in their homes and places of worship.
Most of the time we have Buddhist statues at the home and we are worshipping. That is why
this is done to serve as a reminder of our own true nature of wisdom and compassion.
The reason is our nature of wisdom and compassion.
Therefore, bowing before such figures is neither idolatry nor worship of the figure itself, but rather a sign of gratitude, respect and recognition.
Then here say,
There-
Buddhism is not a idolatry. Idolatry. Rupa vandanaවක් නෙවෙයි. Not worship of the figure itself, but rather sign of gratitude, respect and recognition. Why we are worshipping the Buddhist statues? Because of gratitude, respect and recognition.
Therefore, bowing before such figures is neither idolatry nor worship of the figure itself, but rather a sign of gratitude, respect and recognition. This practice has its roots in Asian culture, where bowing was not construed in the same way as it was and is in the Western world. Within Buddhism there is no conception of God as one who judges, sets an immutable fate, creates, or destroys.
Then when we concern the God concept, God has fully authority or the power. Then God decide. Then God was the judge. Then God set the individual fate. දෛවයේ තීරණය කරන්නේ දෙවියන් වහන්සේ. දෙවියෝ. Then God create something, whatever the thing. දෙවියන් වහන්සේ තමයි නිර්මාණකරුවා වෙන්නේ ලෝකයේම. මිනිස්සුගේ අනිත් දේවල්, වතු පිටි ගෙවල් දොරවල් ඒ වගේම මුළු ලෝකෙම නිර්මාණය කරන්නේ දෙවියෝ. ඒ වගේම ඒව විනාශ කරන්නේ දෙවියෝ. කියන සංකල්පය තමයි දේව සංකල්පය තුල සාකච්ඡා කරන්නේ. God as one who judge, set an immutable fate and create or destroy. But Buddha or Buddhism is not accept the God concept. දෙවියන්ගේ සංකල්පය දේවත්ව සංකල්පය බුද්ධාගම එහෙම පිළිගන්නේ නැහැ.
However, in the sense that some understand God as a divine light expressed within all people, a very similar idea exists within Buddhism.
Then here emphasize, then some religion emphasize God, then God as a divine light, then divine light like a Buddhism, true mind. If you have true mind, your mind is controlled. If you can control your thoughts, feelings, then you have the power. Then you can sometimes control the surrounding things because of mind power. Therefore, it is the true mind and the divine light are same concept. Maybe.
Buddhism by no means rejects the idea of divinity or the divine. Buddhists believe
Buddhism does not reject divinity or divine, because when we are hearing many Buddhist stories, then stories emphasize, not stories, sutra also emphasize different name of divinity and divine. දෙවියෝ ගැන අපි කතා කරනවා. බුද්ධාගමේ දෙවියෝ ඉන්නවා. දෙවියෝ ගැන කතා කරනවා. උදාහරණයක් විදියට මහා මංගල සූත්‍රය, කර්ණීයමෙත්ත සූත්‍රය වගේ සූත්‍ර කියවනකොට බලන්න සමහරක් තැන්වල දෙවියෝගේ ආරාධනාවෙන් තමයි මේ සූත්‍රය කියන්නේ. Some Buddhist teaching done because of the request of divinity. එතන දෙවියෝ ඉන්නවා. හැබැයි බුද්ධාගමේ හරය නැත්තම් ඩොක්ට්‍රීන් එක දෙවියෝ මත නෙවෙයි පදනම් වෙන්නේ. දෙවියෝ කියපු දෙයක් නෙවෙයි බුද්ධාගම කියලා කියන්නේ. බුද්ධාගම කියලා කියන්නේ අපි වගේම මිනිස්සෙක් විසින් කියන ලද දෙයක්. හැබැයි පුද්ගලයා අපිට වඩා වෙනස්. හේතුව තමයි fully awake වෙච්ච කෙනෙක් තමයි බුද්දිසම් එකේදී බුද්ධා කියලා අපි කියන්නේ.
that every moment and every person is an embodiment of this divinity. Who, and indeed what, was the Lord Buddha? The word Buddha is not a name but a title, its meaning is one who has woken up. A Buddha awakens to the knowledge.
So that girl logged again to the session, but she's still saying she is in waiting room again. මේ කොහෙට හරි වෙන තැනකට වෙන්න ඇති ගිහින් ඇත්තේ. හරියටම බලන්න කියන්නකෝ හරි තැනද හරි හරි ලින්ක් එකකටද ගිහින් තියෙන්නේ කියලා. බුඩිස්ට් HRM LMS එකේ බුඩිස්ට් HRM වල මට මතක විදියට පළවෙනි topic 1 introduction and Buddhist economics 1 කියලා දාලා ඇත්තේ. ඒක ක්ලික් කරන්න කියන්නේ. එතකොට ලින්ක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්.
Of the world as it truly is, and in so doing finds release from suffering. He teaches out of sympathy and compassion for the suffering of beings, for the benefit and welfare.
Then when reviewing the Buddhist literature or the Buddhism or Dhamma, then Dhamma explain the important thing explain is suffering. Suffering is the most important thing highlighted through the Dhamma. Then through the teaching of Buddhism or the Buddha, sympathy and compassion, sympathy and compassion for the suffering of being was given by the Lord Buddha for the benefit and welfare of all being in the world.
Of all beings, he teaches in order to lead others to awaken to the understanding that brings final relief from suffering.
Then this up to this point, I think you have idea. Buddhism is a religion, basically religion. Then Buddhism is not based on God, but Buddhism focusing to single important thing, that is suffering. Then as a human, we are suffering. For the example, if there is no food for the lunch, then we are suffering. අයියෝ දවල්ට කන්නේ කොහොමද? If you have more food, then you take more food. Then after taking more food, again you are suffering. අයියෝ කාල වැඩි හුස්ම ගන්න බෑ. ඉස්මෘතාව. Then suffering, all the things in the world suffering. For the example, හොඳ උදාහරණයක් කියන්න. දැන් ඔයාලා ඔය පුටුවක් උඩ වාඩි වෙලා ඉන්නේ. දැන් පැය 3ක් විතර පුටුවක් උඩ වාඩි වෙලා ඉන්න එකට හිතෙනවා අම්මෝ පස්ස රිදෙනවා. දැන් නැගිටින්න තියෙනවා නම් හොඳයි නේ කියලා. දැන් නැගිටලා පැය 3ක් විතර ඉන්නකොට හිතනවා අම්මෝ කකුල් රිදෙනවනේ. දැන් වාඩි වෙන්න තියෙනවා නම් හොඳයි කියලා. බලන්න එකම දේ. The same thing but creating suffering and feeling, good feeling. වාඩි වෙලා ඉන්නකොට හිත ගන්න එක සැපක්, හිතගෙන ඉන්නකොට වාඩි වෙන එක සැපක්. වාඩි වෙලා ඉන්නකොට වාඩි වෙන එක දුකක්, හිතගෙන ඉන්නකොට හිතගෙන ඉන්න එක දුකක්. In the all the thing in the world creating suffering. That is the base of Buddhism. Then entirely whole Buddhist theory based on the suffering and how to relieve the suffering. How to relieve the suffering, how to eradicate the suffering. That is the basic thing of the Buddhism.
Buddhist scriptures. Buddhism cannot be reduced to a collection of theoretical writings nor a philosophical system of thought, although both these form an important part of its tradition. What lies at the heart of Buddhism, according to its own understanding of the matter, is Dharma.
Then through the Buddhism, we are emphasizing triple gains. Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. When Buddha is not appear or living in now. Then secondly, Dhamma and Sangha. Dhamma, the Buddhist teaching. Sangha means the group of people who practice and teach the Buddhist. Then among these three, Buddha was not in here or presence. Therefore, there are two remaining parts, Dhamma and Sangha. Dhamma is important because Dhamma means the all teaching of the Buddha. All teaching of the Buddha.
Dharma is not an exclusively Buddhist concept, but one which is common to Indian philosophical, religious, social, and political thought in its entirety.
Then Dhamma or the Tripitaka is not exclusively Buddhist concept, but it has mixing of several philosophical, religious, social, political idea surrounded in that era.
According to Indian thought, Dharma is that which is the basis of things, the underlying nature of things, the way things are. In short, it is the truth about things, the truth about the world.
Then what is the meaning of Dhamma? Dhamma is truth about things. Make a haduni kohamada. Make a mukhad that. Truth about the world. Loke satya kumadda. Loka satya. Then Dhamma explain truth, reality, reality of the world, reality of the things, reality of the person.
More than this, Dharma is the way we should act.
Therefore, we have to follow the Dhamma. We have to follow the Dhamma. Follow the Dhamma means we have to practice the Dhamma. Practice the Dhamma to
The
understand
Buddha
the reality.
regarded the Dharma he had found as profound, hard to see, hard to understand, peaceful, sublime, beyond the sphere of mere reasoning, subtle, to be experienced by the wise. Knowledge of Dharma is not a matter of scholarly and intellectual study. This does mean that such study may not have a part to play, yet it can never be the whole story. In fact, according to an ancient and authoritative view of the matter, knowledge of Dharma comes about as a result of the interplay between three kinds of understanding. Dharma arises from listening, sutra, that which arises from reflection, cinta, and that which arises from spiritual practice, bhavana.
Then Dhamma was the thing we have to listen. Sutra, there are many sutra, then we have to prefer the sutra. Listening the sutra. That which arise from reflection. After reading the sutra or study the sutra, then we have to reflect the sutra. Chinta, when for the reflect, then the sutra we have to get the thing explained in the sutra, we have to get in our mind. After getting mind, then which arise from spiritual practice. Then first one listening, second one reflection, then third one practice. Practice is the bhavana. Bhavana is the what is bhavana? Then sometime when we are talking about bhavana mean you can perceive. Bhavana is we are sitting in a one place and controlling our body, and then we are thinking or controlling our mind. ආනාපානසති හරි මොකක් හරි භාවනාවක් කරනවා කොහේ හරි තැනක වාඩි වෙලා කකුල් දෙකකට තියාගෙන අත් දෙකකට තියාගෙන භාවනා කරනවා. ඒක නෙමෙයි භාවනා. ඒක ඒක තමයි භාවනාව. නමුත් භාවනාව when you are working, when you are walking very disciplined manner, that is also bhavana. When you are talking with very clear and controlled way, that is again a bhavana. When you are eating very pleasant way, that is a bhavana. Then bhavana is everything, how we are doing. අපි කන්නේ කළු ගහන හැමතැනින්ම කනවා නම් කාලේ විරනකොට වටේ වැටිලා තියෙනවා නම් ඒක භාවනාවක් විදියට කෑමක් කාලා නැහැ කියලා තමයි අපි කියන්නේ. හැමදේම භාවනාවක් විදියට කෙරෙන්න ඕන කියලා කියන්නේ. මොකද භාවනාවෙන් වෙන්නේ කන්ට්‍රෝල් එකක්. අපි සංවර වීමක් සිද්ධ වෙන නිසා.
The aim of Buddhism is to put into practice a particular way of living the holy life, or spiritual life, brahmacharya. That involves training in ethical conduct, sila, and meditative and contemplative techniques, samadhi, and which culminates in the direct realization of the very knowledge, prajna, the Buddha.
Then again, the aim of Buddhism is to develop holy life or spiritual life, Brahmacharya. Holy life, spiritual life, Brahmacharyaවක් තමයි අපි try කරන්නේ Buddhism වලින් ඇති කරන්න. That involve training in ethical conduct. Ethical conduct. සදාචාරාත්මක චර්යාවට අපි කියනවා සීල. And meditative and contemplative techniques, samadhi, and which culminate in the direct realization of the very knowledge, prajna. Then sila, samadhi, prajna. Then we are practicing ethical conduct, sila, then contemplative, samadhi. Then thirdly, we are developing high standard of knowledge, wisdom, prajna.
Buddha himself reached under the tree of awakening. In general, Buddhist literature is voluminous and not all has been translated. The scriptures are written both in Pali, a classical, sacred dialect of Sanskrit, and in Sanskrit. Pali was used by the monks of the Theravada tradition and Sanskrit by the monks of the Mahayana tradition.
Then Pali tradition used by the Pali text or the Pali practice or the Pali teachings or the scriptures used by the Theravada people. Then Sanskrit as a language used by Mahayana
tradition. The Theravada texts. Pitaka.
Then this is the important thing when we are talking about Theravada. Theravada has text. The text name as Tripitaka. Tripitaka means 3 baskets. Then Tripitaka consists of 3 things: Sutra Pitaka, Vinaya Pitaka, and Abhidhamma Pitaka. Sutra Pitaka means basket of disclosures, Anavarane Kargani. Sutra Pitaka. Vinaya Pitaka, basket of discipline. Discipline එක ගැන විනය ගැන කතා කරන පිටකය විනය පිටක. Abhidhamma Pitaka, basket of higher teaching. Abhidhamma Pitaka is very difficult to understand. It explain the higher teaching concept. Then basket of disclose, basket of discipline, basket of higher teaching. There are altogether Sutra Pitaka, Vinaya Pitaka, and Abhidhamma Pitaka explain the Tripitaka. 3 Pitaka, 3 basket.
3 horses. Vinaya Pitaka, basket of discipline. Abhidhamma Pitaka, basket of higher teachings.
Then this slide explain Vinaya Pitaka, Sutra Pitaka, and Abhidhamma Pitaka, Buddhist scriptures. Tripitaka ගත්තම ත්‍රිපිටකය විනය පිටකයෙන්, සූත්‍ර පිටකයෙන් සහ අභිධම්ම පිටකයෙන් කියලා පිටක තුනෙන්ම සමන්විතයි. Then for the example, Vinaya Pitaka has 5 books, Sutra Pitaka has 5 collections, Abhidhamma Pitaka has 7 books. Then Vinaya Pitaka 5 books again divided to Sutra Vibhanga Parivara. Then Sutra Vibhanga again, Mahavibhanga, likewise divided into many. Then how many sutra in the Buddhism? When we are concerned in sutra, there are more than 27,000 සූත්‍ර 27000ක් විතර තියෙනවා කියලා තමයි ත්‍රිපිටකයේ තුල තියෙනවා කියලා තමයි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් කියන්නේ. එතකොට then you can imagine the Buddha's teaching. For example, Bible. Then අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ලොකු පොතක් ලියුවම කියන්නේ බයිබලේ වගේ කියලා. Bible, like a Bible means large book. Then when compared with the Bible, Tripitaka has very big amount. For the example, you can see the Tripitaka collection of Tripitaka book from several temple. ඒ කට්ටිය සමහරක් වෙලාවට කබඩ් කිහිපයක දාලා තියෙන ත්‍රිපිටකය. ත්‍රිපිටකයේ පොත් ගණනාවක් 30 40 50 60කින් තමයි පොත් තියෙන්නේ ලොකු පොත්. ලොකු පොත් ගොඩාක් එකතුවක් තමයි මේ ත්‍රිපිටකය කියලා කියන්නේ. ත්‍රිපිටකයේ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මුල ඉඳලා අගට කියවන්න සෑහෙන්න ලොකු පරිශ්‍රමයක් කෙනෙකුට දරන්න වෙනවා. ඒ තරම් විශාල කරුණු රාශියක් සූත්‍ර රාශියක් කොටස් රාශියක් ඇතුලේ තැන්පත් වෙච්ච දෙයක් තමයි ධර්මය කියලා කියන්නේ. Okay, this is enough for the first one. Then I will move to there's a one chapter. That girl log again to the session, but she still saying she is waiting room again. අනේ මන්ද මට නම් තේරෙන්නේ මේකේ කොහොමද ඒ ළමයව ගන්න කියලා. I know how I haven't any idea of how I link her. Okay, don't worry. Then we will move to the second one. Then again, I play the video freshly, then again taking one by one slide, I hope to discuss. Then the topic is Buddhist economics. Then I use 2-3 sessions for Buddhist economics. This is the first one.
Buddhist economics. Intended learning outcomes of this session are: understand the concept of Western economics, understand the criticisms about the Western economics, understand the basic concepts of the Buddhist economics, traditional and modern economics. We know that we are living in more complex society. The complexity of the society brings the complexity of human behavior. Basically, two forces help to create human complexity. One is inner complexity, which consists of our feelings and thoughts. In addition to our inner complexity, outside world makes the complexity. Good example is the marketing peoples. They make numerous arousals to purchase different products and services through media. All are depended on the economic condition. Today, economic is based on the Western philosophy. Hope to discuss the Western-oriented economic philosophy from this section. Economics can be defined as a science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scare means which alternative uses. Lionel Robbins, 2002. It is important to note that economics defines ends and means primarily in material terms, which moreover can be quantified in monetary terms. Immaterial and non-monetary values are considered subjective and outside its scope. By starting that economic means are naturally limited and scarce. Economic theory accepts a natural element of competition for scarce resources. Human is relatively intelligent class evolved from primitive apes motivated by lusts and aggression. Our intelligence has taught us to behave socially, but fundamentally we are selfish beings subject to the law of survival of fittest. Therefore, traditional economic thoughts based on the scarce resources and market competition. What the economic expectation, standard of living. Today's economic view. Sustainable development. Sustainable development is as development which meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. However, it is difficult to see the sustainable development in the world economy. Political and economic leaders have embraced free market capitalism as a golden formula. Today the G7 or World Industrialized Countries, International Monetary Fund and World Bank prescribe the world a neoclassical recipe of privatization, decentralization, market reform, government interference. Government interference in markets will only lead to inefficient, wasteful government bureaucracies. As history, the liberation or laissez-faire approach will allow markets to increase wealth, promote innovation and optimize production. Current economy is increasingly clear that our economies are inherently flawed, arid. While substantial wealth is generated mostly by a minority leader in developed countries, the majority of the world population remains poor. The gap between rich and poor keeps growing in all societies. Environmental degradation seems irreversible. Drugs and new forms of slave trade prosper. Corruption and corporate fraud are widespread. Stock markets are running into global casinos. War is increasingly economic, motivated by either the lack or the protection of wealth. Now we have to revisit the assumption of the traditional and modern economy. Classical economics define the world in things, of separate building blocks. Human beings are isolated consumers and producers interacting at market driven by monetary gains. In spiritual tradition, spiritual teachings point out there is reality, no independent things. Human are viewed as being part of a larger whole with which they can communicate by opening up their hearts and minds. Different holistic views. Modern physics, the universe consists of combined patterns of energy. Einstein's favorite sayings, the field generates the object, not vice versa. That is, whole systems give rise to specific things, not the other way around. Cartesian worldview, we can only know reality by knowing specific part. Einstein discovered that in order to know things, we need to know the whole from which they originate. We are not isolated hard and fast physical things, but more like light beings, or energy flows, continuously interrelating and changing. Then, we are more like intangibles. Therefore, intangibles can't be measured in classical economic models. Traditional and modern economics and modern knowledge economy. Economic strategies are built around the possession of material things such as land, labor and capital. Spiritual traditions and modern sciences claim the opposite. They recognize the unlimited potential in every sentient being, the potential to be whole and enlightened. The key in modern knowledge economy is not consideration about material possession. Know-how and creativity, the domain of the mind. Most successful business strategies focus less on things but more on how to manage them. All technical and social innovation is based on what is now phrased as intellectual capital. Conclusion about traditional or classical economic thoughts. It has turned the 19th century mechanistic matter-only worldview. We should revisit long-held axioms. The traditional concept that we are simply competitive beings follow scarce material resources is incorrect. Intangible values are equally important for our well-beings. These intangibles are stored in the mind, free from physical constraints and therefore potentially of unlimited supply. Happiness of the current economy is not merely determined by what we have, how much consume, but also by, for happiness, what we know, how we can manage, how we can be created. Ultimately by who we are, so not by having, but by being. Therefore, we are human being after all. Human nature and motivation. What kind of beings are we? Happy or unhappy? Altruistic or selfish? Compassionate or competitive? Modest or greedy? Driven to seek short-term pleasure? Seeking meaning? A higher purpose? A longer-term state of happiness? Economists have accepted the principles of selfish individualism. The more the individual consumes, the better off he will be. He consumes out of perpetual needs, which if unmet make him innately unhappy. Economic growth is achieved when individuals consume more and more so that demand and output is not given a room for altruism. Altruism incur for no conceivable benefits, individual have to scarify. Scarification of individual for the community. In future, when society practice the altruism, individual can enjoy the help given from the community. Altruism is the core of our practice and it is the cheapest and most effective insurance for our future. Compassion will make us happy. Compassion can only work if we accept an altruistic attitude. If compassion is harmony with our essence, we can actually enjoy being compassionate. If we are inherently selfish, any attempt to develop a compassionate attitude would be self-defeating. Compassion is helping to effective empathy on the human mind, body, health and relationships, and also our well-being. Compassionate frame of mind has positive effect on our mental and physical health as well as our social life. Lack of empathy has been found to cause or aggravate serious social, psychological and even physical disorders. Recent research on stress shows that people who only seek short-term pleasure are more prone to stress than those who seek a higher purpose, who seek meaning rather than pleasure. Disregarding short-term selfish needs is actually a source of longer-term happiness. Then, classical economic notion of selfish individualism upside down. Main human impulses, competition and consumption. Competition and consumption have sidestepped spiritual and moral issues. Economists have overlooked that the more we consume, the happier we are. According to economics, market will bring us all the things that we want. Our contentment is obtained by the senses. Consuming material goods leads sensual experiences. This feeds an emotion of sensual desire. At the same time, competitors are longing after desire the same things on the limited resources. Hence we experience fear, the fear of losing out, the fear that our desire will not be satisfied. Mechanism of expanding capitalism is based by two strong emotions. First, desire. Second, fear. Buddha taught, emotions are based on ignorance and a misconception of reality. They can be removed by the understanding of reality. According to Buddhism, happiness is an inner experience, available to anyone, regardless wealth or poverty. Fundamentally, there is nothing that we lack. By developing the mind and inequalities, we can experience perfect wholeness and contentment. Finally, if we share with others, we will find that we are not surrounded by competitors. Others depend on us as we depend on them. Buddhist economics. Intended learning out.
Okay. Then I try to review one by one of the slide. Then first one, these are the learning outcome. Then basically we need to understand the Western idea about the Western economics. Then we have to criticize about the Western economics. Then thirdly, give rough idea about Buddhist economics.
Outcomes of this session are: understand the concept of Western economics. Understand the criticisms about the Western economics. Understand the basic concepts of the Buddhist economics. Traditional and modern economics.
Then here there are two terms, traditional and modern economics. Then traditional economics mean the origin of the economy. Then modern economy has different idea incorporated to the traditional economics. Then modern economic is different thing rather than when compared with the traditional economic.
We know that we are living in more complex society. The complexity of the society brings the complexity of human
Then
behavior.
it is very
Basically,
clear we are
two
living in
forces
very
help to create
dynamic,
human
volatile,
complexity.
complex society.
One is
Then
inner
complexity coming
complexity,
from
which
different
consists
sources.
of our feelings and
Basically, the
thoughts.
complexity of
In
human coming
addition
from
to our
our
inner
inner side,
complexity,
our
outside
feeling, our
world
thoughts,
makes the
our ideas.
complexity.
For the example, when you are
A good
going to
example
a
is the
boutique, then
marketing
there are
peoples.
different items. Then
They
seeing
make
the item,
numerous of
showing the
apples
item,
to
then
purchase
you have
different
idea. I need to
products
buy
and
this one, this
services
one, this
through
one, this one.
media.
Likewise, then our
All are
inner forces
dependent
are
on the
very
economic
strong to
conditions.
determine our
Today,
complexity.
economic is
Other
based on
thing
the
is the
Western philosophy.
marketers. Marketers
to
always
discuss the
make
Western-oriented
different
economic
stimulus. For the
philosophy in
example,
this
when you are
section.
watching the TV, there are different ads.
Economics can be
Then this ad explain or this ad stimule to buy something. For the example, some products, some services are not necessary for our basic requirement. We are buying those things, we are spending money because of unnecessary things. Then therefore the modern economy and modern marketing create very complexity within our personality, within our body, within our mind. That is the reality of the human. Then සාමාන්‍ය මනුස්සයෙක් විදිහට අපි ගත්තොත් අපි ගාව විවිධාකාර වූ අවශ්‍යතාවයන් තියෙනවා. මේ අවශ්‍යතාවයන් ඇත්තටම ඇති කරන්නේ දැනට තියෙන ආර්ථිකය සහ විශේෂයෙන්ම අලෙවිකරුවන් විසින්. අලෙවිකරුවන් විසින් විවිධ දේවල් අපට පෙන්නනවා. විවිධ දේවල් වල තියෙන ගුණයන් වටිනාකම් භාවිතා කරන විදිහ ඒක භාවිතා කරලා පස්සේ වෙන දේවල් විස්තර කරනවා. මේව දැක්කම අපටත් හිතෙන ඒවා ගන්න අපිත් ඒවා අරගෙන පාවිච්චි කරන්න. මෙන්න මේ අසීමිත වූ අවශ්‍යතාවයන් අපි හිතලා තියෙන හින්දා අපි සාමාන්‍ය සංකීර්ණ පුද්ගලයෙක් බවට පත් වෙලා ඉවරයි ආර්ථිකය තුල.
Defined as a science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scare means which alternative uses.
Then what is economics? Economics is a science. It is a science. The science study the human behavior. Then economic also explain the human behavior. But human behavior explain the relationship between ends and scare mean. Ends and scare mean the final output and scare means scare. Then the basic some basic idea about the economic is scarcity. All resources are scarce. Then using scarce resource, how we satisfy the customer, satisfy the end user. Therefore, the economic explain human behavior as a relationship between end and scarce mean, which alternative users. Then how we satisfy the end user using scared mean through the alternative ways, alternative use.
Lionel Robbins, 2002. It is important to note that economics defines ends and means primarily in material terms, which moreover can be quantified in monetary terms.
Then the important thing in the economic is the material things. All the theories, all the concepts, all the stories in the economics explain material things. Material things. For the example, when you are going to cut your hair at the salon is a service, but the service made what? Physical thing, material thing. Then we transact cutting hair and giving money. Then that is material thing. Therefore, economic always try to quantify, then quantitative approach. Economic means the quantitative approach. Always talk about money, monetary terms, monetary terms.
Immaterial and non-monetary values are considered subjective and outside its scope.
Therefore, in the economy, immaterial and non-monetary values are considered subjective and outside the scope. Therefore, in the economy, they are not talking about immaterial, non-monetary values. Non-monetary values, immaterial values, they are not considered as a subject. They are considered as outside of the scope.
By starting that economic means are naturally limited and scarce.
And as you know, economy explains the scarcity. Why economy theories, why economic concepts are emerged? because of the limited or scarcity.
Economic theory accepts a natural element of competition for scarce resources.
Then as a result of scarcity and unlimited desires, so the end users' expectations, there is a competition. Then you have idea about the economy. Economy is based on scarcity and unlimited end user need. Therefore, there is a competition. Then there are three idea. One is scarcity or scarce resources, limited resources, unlimited wants of human. Then thirdly, as a result of scarcity and unlimited needs, then there is a competition.
Human is relatively intelligent class evolved from primitive apes motivated by lusts and aggression.
Then what is human? Human is intelligent when compared with the other animal. For the example, dogs, cat, elephant, they have the brain, but when compared with our brain is super rather than other animals' brain. However, we are coming from where? Apes or monkey. Apes කියලා කියන්නේ නිලව වඳුර කියන එක. Apes or monkey. Then our origin or the root is apes. Our root is ape or monkey. Then here say from primitive apes motivated by lust and aggregations. Then human basic thing is basic behavioral motivation is lust. Huh? The other thing is aggressions. Lust කියලා කියන්නේ රාගය. Then aggression කියන්නේ ආක්‍රමණය. Then for the example, when we are looking about apes or monkey, then they are behave according to the lust and aggressions. Lust and aggression. Therefore, lust and aggressions, those qualities are inherited in our body. අපේ body එක තුල මේව තියෙනවා. මොකද්ද? Lust and aggression. රාගය සහ ආක්‍රමණය කියන එක තියෙනවා.
Our intelligence has taught us to behave socially, but fundamentally we are selfish beings subject to the law of survival of fittest.
Then as a result of lust and aggression, we are presenting selfishness. Selfish කියලා කියන්නේ තමන් ගැන විතරයි හිතන්නේ ආත්මාර්ථකාමීත්වය කියන එක. And then when we are reviewing the all human in the world, the human think about self, think about the self. Therefore, human present selfishness. Selfish being subject to the law of survival of fittest. මේ සමාජය තුළ ජීවත් වෙනකොට අපට අවශ්‍ය විදියට ගැලපෙන්න අපි අපේ ආත්මාර්ථකාමීත්වය තමයි පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ. We are use selfishness to the fit with the social survival.
Therefore, traditional economic thoughts based on the scarce resources and market competition.
It is okay, then I think you know traditional economics based on scarcity and market competition.
What the economic expectation, standard of living.
Then economic expectation is standard of living. ජීවත් වීමේ තත්ත්වය තමයි ජීවත් වීමේ තත්ත්වය වැඩි කිරීම තමයි ආර්ථික කියන ආර්ථික විද්‍යාවේ මූලධර්ම වෙන්නේ නැත්නම් මූලික දෙයක් වෙන්නේ.
Today's economic view. Sustainable development is as development which meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs.
Then when compared with the traditional economics, there are different ideas coming from different people regarding the scarcity of the resource. Then one new concept of economy is sustainable development. Then there are many people talking about sustainability. sustainable economics, sustainable marketing, sustainable HRM, different thing. What is the meaning of sustainability? The sustainability is meeting the need of the present. වර්තමානයේ අවශ්‍යතාවයන් එකතු කර ගන්නවා නැත්නම් ඉටු කර ගන්නවා, meet the need of the present without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. Now we are enjoying the life, but we have to remain the resources. We have to keep the resources for the future consumption. Then අපදා අපි සම්පත් පරිභෝජනය කරනකොට අපි දැන් සම්පත් පරිභෝජනය කරන ප්‍රමාණය වගේ ප්‍රමාණයක් හෝ ඊට වැඩි ප්‍රමාණයක් අනාගතයේ අපේ ළමයිට ඉස්සරහට එන අයට ඉතුරු කිරීම තමයි අපි sustainable development කියලා කියන්නේ. That is very attractive and good concept, sustainable development. Then under the sustainable development, we enjoy the life, but we protect the resources for future needs.
However, it is difficult to see the sustainable development in the world economy.
Then what is the reality of the world? Then there are a concept of sustainable development, but the reality we are practicing sustainable development. But now we are enjoy our life wasting limited resource. We are not ignore the future.
Political and economic leaders have embraced free market capitalism as a golden formula.
Then nowadays, the main countries in the world use free market capitalism. නිදහස් වෙළඳපොළ ධනවාදය තමයි පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ. It's like a golden formula. රත්තරන් සමීකරණයක් වගේ තමයි free market capitalism එක පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ.
Today the G7 or World Industrialized Countries, International Monetary Fund and World Bank prescribe the world a neoclassical recipe of privatization, decentralization, market reform.
Then nowadays, country practice what? Privatization, decentralization, market reform as a neoclassical trends. Neoclassical කියලා කියන්නේ නව සම්ප්‍රදායික ප්‍රවණතාවයක් විදියට privatization, decentralization and market reform ගැන කතා කරනවා. For the example, nowadays our country, our economy also try to practice privatization, decentralization and market reform.
The world a neoclassical recipe of privatization, decentralization, market reform, government interference. Government interference in markets will only lead to inefficient, wasteful government bureaucracy.
Then in the economy, we are talking about government interference. The government interference is market will only lead to inefficient, wasteful government bureaucracy. When we are reviewing current situation, government intervention is inefficient. කිසි කාර්යක්ෂමතාවයක් නැති දෙයක් තමයි මේ government interference එක වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. For the example, recently government decides some maximum price for rice or the coconut. But what is the reality? Reality is rejecting the government policy, government interference.
As history, the liberation or laissez-faire approach will allow markets to increase wealth, promote innovation and optimize production. Current economy is increasingly clear that our economies are inherently flawed, arid, While substantial wealth is generated mostly by a minority leader in developed countries, the majority of the world population remains poor.
Then what is the reality of the current economy in the world? Then substantial wealth is generated mostly by a minority leaders in the developed countries. Then majority of the wealth remain at the minority people. කුඩා මිනිස්සු ප්‍රමාණයක් ළඟ ලොකු මුදල් ප්‍රමාණයක් තියෙනවා. Then majority of the world population remain poor. ලෝකේ විශාල මිනිස්සු ප්‍රමාණයක් දුප්පත්. අපේ ලංකාව ගත්තත් කෝටිපතියෝ මිලියනපතියෝ ඉන්නේ කීප දෙනයි. රුපියල් 10000ක්වත් අමාසිකට හම්බ කරන්නේ නැති මිනිස්සු විශාල ප්‍රමාණයක් ඉන්නවා. දැන් බලන්න අවුරුදු 70ක් නිදහස ලැබිලා. We enjoy more than 70 years after independence. Then different political parties try to reduce this gap, but again and again the gap is increased, gradually increase. Whatever the political, whatever the economical policies they introduce to the country, finally poor are more than the rich people. Then there are more poor.
The gap between rich and poor keeps growing in all societies. Environmental degradation seems irreversible. Drugs and new forms of slave trade prosper. Corruption and corporate fraud are widespread.
Then you can, I think, imagine we are practicing modern economy, sustainable economy, then economical theory, market reform, decentralization or privatization, then different liberal economy, open economy. Then we use different economical concept under the traditional and modern economy. However, what is our real picture? When we are seeing our country, the rich and poor gap is high. Then what is our environmental situation? Environmental degradations seems irreversible. අවක්‍රමණය වෙන්න පටන් අරන් තියෙනවා. ඒක නතර කරන්න බැරි මට්ටමටම ගිහිල්ලා තියෙනවා. කැලෑ කපනෝ, ගස් කපනෝ, වන ස්වාභාවික සම්පත් විනාශ කරනවා. Because of our economical requirement, because of our economical activities. Then drugs and new form of slave trade prosper. Drugs is I think like sugar, rice, coconut, හැම තැනම දැන් drugs තියෙන. ඕනම තැනක drugs ගන්න පුළුවන්. හරියට හාල් පොල් සීනි ගන්න විදියට. ඒ තරමටම අපේ ආර්ථිකය දියුණු වුණාට ආර්ථිකයේ යට තියෙන දේවල් විනාශ කරමින් යන හැම තැනකම